What's your healthiest meal?
What?
Do you have any health meals? Anything that's fresh?
No, we don't.
The culture in America is that everything revolves around food, and unhealthy food.
The healthcare cost trajectory is out of control because the consumers are not in charge.
This is clearly an unsustainable trend.
We're not telling people how to use food.
Red meat,
Beef.
green beans with bacon and butter.
When we talk about this idea of plant-based nutrition, it's a powerful concept, and it's one that my father is associated with.
Dr. Colin Campbell, Doc. Whole Foods plant-based diet.
Right.
You don't mean the store.
You know, I went on essentially a plant-based diet. No dairy, no meat. Type 2 diabetes, heart disease, hypertension. Gone.
Physicians don't know how to prescribe a diet. We've been taught how to write prescriptions.
Right now, this information isn't available to them. So how can they make a decision?
We're working our way into the political process here.
The absence of meat as part of your diet is not the best direction for all Kentuckians.
You got to realize that there's a lot of big money interest.
But the amendment itself is flat out true.
We're trying to demonstrate this concept in this community.
We offered 10 days of food.
I've been testing for 26 years, and I've never seen results like this.
Mr. Speaker, I call for a vote.
The folks that are challenging this, they represent big business.
Well, the truth is a stubborn thing, and it doesn't go away.
The documentary Plant Pure Nation explores scientific evidence.
In any movement, the first step is always the hardest.
Your total cholesterol is 150.
Is that accurate?
Yep.
When people learn about this, the very next question they have, why haven't I heard this before? Why? Because revolutions can't start without awareness.
Back when I started in this, there were 3 farmers markets. Now there's about 26.
The amount of money that we spend to create the kind of health situation we have, it's not working.
This is going to be a lifestyle.
Our thesis is that we've got to change this world from the bottom up.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to our series of messages or presentations about health. We're going to focus on health from a biblical standpoint, what God's plan is regarding our health and how we should manage our health. If you stick with us, our recordings or presentations are going to be progressive. This is our initial episode 1, which is more of an introduction. And my name is David Mema.
And my name is Wish Mema. I'm an acute care nurse practitioner. I've been a nurse practitioner since 2013. Prior to that, I was a bedside nurse for several years, I think since 2005. And what has motivated us to do this video is because since I became a healthcare worker, I've encountered a lot of people who come to the hospital that are acutely ill and needing help. We have a lot of people who are what we call frequent flyers. These are people who are chronically ill. Most of the diseases that they come with are heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, which is hypertension. And you find that these people are almost living in the hospital with no hope of any recovery whatsoever. And looking at all this, we've been discussing and we were motivated to see how we can do our little part to help, because believe you me, there's a lot of information out there, and there's no reason for people to have all these chronic diseases, and there's no reason why we cannot live a life full of life as God intended for us to do.
All right, an abundant life.
Yes.
So this is our introductory episode, and our first topic today is diet and health. We're going to review the relationship between diet, or what we eat, and our health. So that's going to be our focus. Does that make sense?
Yeah, diet and health. Are they even related in the first place? And as we keep going, we'll realize that they are.
And so our starting point is the scientific side of it. Let's review science, what science says regarding what we eat, and see if it's correlated or related to our health. The foods that we take, do they have an impact on our health at all? We're going to find out based on our studies here today. I've heard a saying that eat to live, not to die. Eat to live, not to die. Our objective here, again, in this episode, is to understand the connection between nutrition and diet. I wonder if any of us, when we're eating, take time to think and say, I'm taking this food, this hamburger, and I'm going to eat it. What value does it bring to my body? I'm going to drink this water. What value does this water bring to my body and health as a whole?
Yeah, and I think when we going back to your topic of eat to live and not to die, when we eat, I'm sure none of us are saying, let me eat this so that I can die. Mm-hmm. We are saying, let me eat this so that I feel better, mm-hmm. so that I can live.
Right.
So the more we focus on the reason why we eat, we eat the foods we eat, it helps us to realize, are we eating to live, mm-hmm. or are we eating to die? Because sometimes you may think that nobody eats to die, but unfortunately in our current society,
indirectly,
that's what we are doing indirectly. We are eating to die. So we need to understand the connection between nutrition and disease.
Right. So when we eat, our intake of food, sometimes we use food as what do you call it? If I'm depressed, some people when they're depressed, they want to eat, mm-hmm. as a way to feel better. Mm-hmm. But they're not looking and thinking and reviewing what I'm eating, what is it doing to my health,
to my body,
to my body ultimately. So we need to be thinkers. Review what you're putting in your body, in your mouth, before you do it.
So maybe we can also talk about diet, because some people may not understand, mm-hmm. David, what is diet? When I say your diet, am I talking about maybe the portions, or what is it that I'm referring to?
I looked up the dictionary definition of a diet. It says a diet is all kinds of food that a person habitually eats. For example, you can have a vegetarian diet, mm-hmm. right? You can also have a plant-based diet. Mm-hmm. You can have a carnivorous diet. Mm-hmm. Before I proceed here, what's the difference between a vegetarian diet and a plant-based diet? Are the two the same or they're different?
They are different. A vegetarian diet is it's basically not eating meat. Okay. But you can, some vegetarians will go ahead and eat meat products. By that I mean things like milk, cheese,
byproducts of
animals. So there's a difference there. And when you are a vegan or plant-based, well, actually that's another topic altogether, because vegan can mean something else as well. Mm-hmm. But if you're plant-based, basically you're looking at anything that is grown, that is living from the soil, from the ground. And in another episode, we'll also talk about actually the fact that you can be an unhealthy plant-based eater.
That's correct.
So we'll talk about
Just
that.
because you are a vegetarian doesn't mean you're eating healthy.
Yes.
Just because you're following a plant-based diet doesn't mean you are healthy as well.
Okay.
So, like you said, that would be another episode on its own. But that's interesting to note that the definition of a diet, it's the intake of food that I take habitually.
Actually, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then, whilst we're on that, maybe you can also tell us what is health. When I say, health, what am I talking about?
Again, the dictionary definition of health is the state of being free from illness or disease.
Okay.
So health is the state of being free from illness or injury. Now, this can be either physical or mental as well. So mental health is part of your health.
Part of your health.
If I'm injured, I break my leg, it's part of my health. If I have an infection in my body, that's also part of my health. So the state where I don't have any illness or any injury, mentally or physically, that's health.
And I'm glad you mentioned the mental part of it, because as we go on, you also realize that mental illness can also be a result of what you eat. Can you believe that? Yeah. Some people may think that mental health is just maybe what somebody is doing to you, or just emotions flying, but things like depression, there are some foods that can actually cause or even treat depression. So that's something that we'll also go into.
Okay.
So talking about eating to live and not die, we need to focus on, when you understand the relationship between your health and what you eat, you learn to become what we call a conscious eater. You are thinking every time when you grab something to take a bite, you ask yourself, is this good for me? What is this doing to my body? Because whatever we eat impacts the growth of the cells that make up our organs, that make up our bodies. So when we eat, we need to learn to become conscious eaters. And that means, what am I eating? Is it going to produce health? Is it going to provide healing? Is it going to provide energy? Or is it going to promote death? Those are the questions.
That comes back to the first introductions, what we talked about, you eat to die.
Exactly.
So if I'm a conscious eater, you're saying part of it could be, am I eating something that is going to cause death?
Yes. Am I asking myself that question? This hamburger that I'm holding, or this soda that I'm holding, or this fruit that I'm holding, what is it doing to me?
Okay.
When you know the relationship between health and food, you tend to ask yourself those questions. And that is hopefully what we will achieve as we go forward.
Okay.
Is my food, is this providing fuel? Again, is it cleansing? Is it healing? And is it nourishing? That should be your question before you put anything in your mouth. And we also notice that there's another saying that you are what you eat.
That's right.
And like I explained before, if the food that I eat becomes a building block for the proteins and the cells that make up my body, those cells make up organs, and those organs make up my body. So if that's the case, it means what I eat becomes who I am.
That's right.
Yes.
If this is my first time hearing someone explaining the importance of being a conscious eater, somebody who reviews what I eat before I partake of it, sounds like a lot of work.
Well, you can decide, if you get into the habit of doing something, it becomes part of you. and it becomes easier as you go. The first time it's difficult, but once you get used to it, it gets easier. And you can also just make a decision too. Do I want to live on medication and taking pills? Because that can be a difficult lifestyle too, because I've seen people come to the hospital with a whole big paper bag full of medications. And these are medications they have to manage and make sure they take at the right time. Some of them they cannot take together. Some of them they have to count the number of hours before they can take it because of the previous medication. So looking at that, and also looking at the amount of time spent in hospitals when one is sick, the amount of time that you spend, for example, some end up with renal failure, end-stage renal failure, and they need hemodialysis. Hemodialysis is pretty much where your kidneys have stopped functioning and they are taking a machine to do the work of your kidneys. So this machine, you have to sit there for at least 3 hours, and you do this 3 times a week.
And all this can be traced or can be avoided by what we eat.
Exactly. So you can, like you said, which is harder, to focus on a good diet or to endure what comes with illness?
This kind of puts a heavy burden on those that prepare food in the home.
Yes.
If it's a family, whoever is in charge of coming up with a menu, they must be very intentional about the type of food that they prepare and provide for the family. Those that are single, that just cook by themselves or choose to eat out at McDonald's or some restaurant, again, you need to be very intentional about what you're eating in that restaurant, the type of food that you're getting from that restaurant, they're consuming.
And David, another thing that just came to my mind when you mentioned those that prepare food, you know, I'm going to speak to mothers because I'm a mother. I honestly, after I've started learning all this about diet, I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do to my children? Because like you said, you know, when you are preparing food, those habits that you are developing in your children, they are going to grow up with them. And you find that it's something we probably will speak to later, or we can even go into it
I think
now,
this is the time to get into it. Yeah.
So you find that there is this belief that, you know, there are hereditary diseases. And if you notice, most of the diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, stroke, heart disease, people tend to say, oh, you know, because it runs in my family, and so, my mother had it, my grandfather, and the list goes on, even cancer. But you realize that the reason why these diseases run in families is because the eating habits run in families as well.
So if we're eating a lot of a particular type of food in the home, growing up maybe from a little young child, and I grow up, I become a teenager, I go to college, still following the same habits day in, day out. By the time I leave the home and start off on my own, I'm going to continue
the same thing.
The same habits, eating habits, that is.
And then people say it's hereditary, the disease, when it's actually not. It's all about the food that we are consuming as a family.
Okay, so knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Probably we've been doing it because we didn't know.
Yes.
We are just following tradition that was introduced to us by our parents or whoever was responsible for our childhood, and we just continue with that type of tradition without the knowledge that we need to be conscious eaters.
Yes.
People who review everything, ingredients. I know when you go to the grocery store, I sometimes get frustrated with you because you take so much time, you look at the packaging, you're reading the ingredients one by one. It takes us a long time in that store.
It's important because some foods, and that's a whole topic on its own, but when you go to the grocery store and you're buying especially packaged food, You need to be able to read, just get into the habit of reading what the ingredients are.
Right.
And I think I once read somewhere in another health book that, you know, once you have more than 2-3 ingredients in that food item, don't consume it. That's just too much. And it means it's been processed, and those are the type of foods that can end up causing disease, cancer, stuff like that.
Let's go to science and see what science says regarding food. Remember, our topic today is the relationship between diet and our health. There's a study that was done by Harvard University on obesity prevention, and another study, similar study done by the CDC on obesity causes and consequences. The summary findings from these two studies says a healthy diet can prevent weight gain and chronic disease. A healthy diet can prevent weight gain and chronic disease. And these surveys or research studies kind of list what they call healthy foods. Those include whole grains, vegetables, fruits, nuts. I'm not, these are the foods that they call healthy, right? Then they say the foods to avoid are refined foods. I hate to talk about refined foods. Refined foods, sugary drinks like Coca-Cola, Fanta, Sprite, any soda of some sort, or any of these juices that are full of artificial sweeteners. Should avoid.
Corn syrup, we'll talk about that in another.
Yep. Video. Red meat, beef that is. These are type of meals that we should be avoiding, or type of food that we should be avoiding according to the Harvard study and the CDC study on the relationship between diet and health.
Yeah. And you did mention foods that help prevent disease, and if you notice, the foods that David talked about are they're plant-based. And in another video in future, we're going to look at God's diet that he gave us initially for us to eat, and you'll find that what took people time to do research and study and go to get some education is something that we already have
in the Bible.
In the Bible.
Yes.
And that is interesting because if you're a Bible reader, you should already know.
Right.
Right. God gave this to us
the
because
plants
he wanted
and the
us
grains,
to live.
the nuts, yes.
He wanted us to eat to live, not to die.
Not to die.
Yeah.
All right. Now, there's also what we call the American standard diet for those that live in the Western world, but everything started in America, in the United States, this type of diet. I'm going to read here from the American Standard Diet, which says the dietary guidelines for Americans states that the average American diet consists of excess sodium, saturated fat, refined grains, and calories from solid fats and added sugars. Furthermore, the guidelines state that Americans eat less vegetables, they eat less fruits, they eat less whole grains, dairy products, and oils that are recommended. From what I'm reading here, the American diet seems to favor more the foods that we said we should avoid.
Yes.
The refined foods, the meat, red meat, all these saturated with fat and sodium. These are the foods to avoid, and yet that's what the American diet is pushing.
And unfortunately, you know, the kind of diet that is being pushed, it is tasty.
Very nice.
That's the truth. We all know that fried food tastes so much better.
If you go to KFC,
you'll enjoy.
Right.
and they are tasty, and they are just easier to prepare.
Fast.
They're fast. That's why it's called fast food. But they are not, again, they are not healthy for you. And most of the food that is unhealthy is also addictive. It's something we'll talk about in another episode about how this all processed food and this, I honestly don't want to call it food. I was reading in this book called Vegucation. It was written by an author. I cannot remember his name, but he's a pharmacist, and he talks on the effects of diet and stuff like that. But his major point is Americans live on a lot of medication. So he's trying, even though he's a pharmacist, he also found that most of his patients who came to the pharmacy were coming and getting medication, and he knew that the medication was not going to do anything for them except suppress symptoms, but not heal. So he started helping some of his patients and telling them to go on a plant-based diet, and they lost weight, they stopped having hypertension. And so he talks about that to say it's better to be educated in, that's why the book is called Vegucation versus Medication. He's actually a pharmacist, but he's promoting a plant-based diet, which may put him out of business, but that is somebody who cares.
Cares about the patients.
And so he talks about the same thing, that, in America, we are just being fed this food that we, in the end, become addicted to, and it's not helping anybody.
There's no nutritional value.
There's no nutritional value, and it's also causing sickness.
But you and me grew up in a developing country. Right?
In Zimbabwe.
In Zimbabwe. We ate a lot of meat.
Well, you may say we ate a lot of meat, but anybody who grew up in Zimbabwe, at least prior
anywhere
to
Africa.
anywhere in Africa rather, or any other developing country, you will notice that it's only now that people are starting to eat a lot of meat. When I was growing up, most families have at least 4 children, 5 children, and so on. And you always have relatives coming over. And whenever we ate, our staple food was sadza, or for some fortunate, they could have some rice. But even then, we had vegetables. Meat was not an everyday thing. And even on the days that we had meat, you actually would probably have a little small piece of meat like this size,
one or two pieces
three
per meal.
Three if you're lucky, and it wouldn't be in every meal.
So it was
probably once a day.
Meat is a luxury.
It was a luxury
for most.
Yeah. So we didn't eat as much as we do today.
And the meat in the developing countries, the cows, they feed on natural grass.
Exactly.
They are not given these medications.
Now they feed on, there are a lot of genetically modified things going out there. And like I said, the quantities also mattered. We didn't eat meat every day. And if we did eat it every day, it was just maybe for one meal. And very little. Now you go, most places, people eat out a lot. Even in Africa, people are starting to eat like half a chicken on their own, something that never used to happen.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can order as much beef as you want. Beef that is not fully cooked.
Exactly.
That's still red with the blood. If you notice, we keep saying in another episode, it's intentionally that we say that, because we want you to stay tuned so that you can follow the sequence of these videos and how they build up to a particular point.
And it's also too much information to share in one sitting anyway.
That is true.
So today, I think...
Before we close, there's a Pew Research Center. In 2016, they did a study, or a survey rather, on food and nutrition attitudes. They found that 54%, 54% of Americans' actual eating habits are less healthy today than they were 20 years ago.
So it's just getting worse.
It's just getting worse. It's just getting worse. These fast foods, they're not good foods to eat to live. They are foods that will lead towards some illness
and
possibly premature death as well.
Because as a disclaimer, we know we are all going to die.
Yes.
But we don't want to die a premature death. And usually when you have bad eating habits and you have all these diseases, the life that you lead is not a good life. You just, probably some people end up wishing they were dead because it's so miserable. And to maybe just solidify what we just talked about, we are going to watch a short video.
Yes, please watch this short clip from Plant Nation. This is where some doctor scientist is talking about a study that they did in China that they call the China study.
Which is the largest study that they ever did that compares health with the relationship between health and
your diet.
The diet that you eat. And you realize that there's a lot to learn.
We'll also provide a link for you at the end of the video here so that you can watch the full video clip about this plant-based study that was done in relation to your diet and health.
And it's called the Plant Pure Nation.
Plant Pure Nation. So just click on the link below at the end of the video. That will lead you to the full version of that video.
Yes.
And thank you for listening.
And remember to like
and
subscribe
and share.
And share our video so that if you subscribe, then whenever we have something new, it gives you a notification so that you can watch some more. Thank you for listening and watching.
Thank you very much.
God bless you.
See you next time.